All right, hey everybody. So, episode 52 for the Keepers of Fate did not have very good audio. Something was up with our settings. I'm guessing the filters were off. So I'm gonna do a summary, kind of like I did with the Siegebreakers episode 56. Just kind of run through what happened. The Keepers of Fate spoke with the Myrmidons and discovered a bit more about their purpose, what they were there for. It turns out that they were basically charged with protecting this relic weapon, similar to the Order of Valora, who was supposed to protect Veracin, the axe that Morthos got in the very beginning of the campaign. That order had fizzled, had gone out of existence somehow, but the Myrmidons are still around, and they've been protecting this weapon for a while, but recently a dragon has invaded their territory and made its roost a ways outside the city. But not before driving the Myrmidons out of their home, either to flee and become sort of exiled like the ones that our party has met, or some of them seem to be in the dragon's thrall. They have accepted a kind of servitude under the dragon. After learning this, they spent some time discussing their options. It seemed to be rather unlikely that they'd be able to just sneak around the dragon and get to the weapon unhindered. So they were talking about kind of how to combat the dragon without getting in combat. Ideas were thrown around like collapsing the dragon's lair or the entrance thereto and starving the dragon inside. Um, the Myrmidons aren't completely familiar with everything about the dragon. They know certain things, but aspects of its inhabitants of the area, like its minions and the details of the lair, are still kind of a mystery. They do happen to have a map of the mine that the dragon has made its lair in. The mine has these like 3 levels with kind of snaking mining tunnels, all connected by one central wide mine shaft. 2 mine shafts actually exist. One of them does not go as deep as the other. At least one of them was certainly wide enough for the dragon to fly through. The other one might have been. But below these 3 levels, the Myrmidons revealed that the miners had to have tried digging further down. There's evidence of, more excavation, but they didn't end up doing much mining there because effectively they broke through into this huge cavernous underground like sand cave, which did not contain the same rich ore deposits as the upper levels. So they kind of abandoned the excavation of the mine after that. More ideas that were thrown around were things like drugging the dragon. The classic cow laced with sedatives idea was brought up. So that was fun, but eventually decided against because they didn't know where they could procure the correct sedatives, and Jasna did not necessarily have the time to. I don't think tincture is a verb, is it? To create them all. They also discussed using the various explosives that Jasna has collected from random old men in cities, which apparently is a theme, I guess. That was discussed too, but because of the volatile nature, it was kind of put on the back burner. Like, we'll keep it in mind, but it's not our primary plan. Jasna is very partial to incapacitating the dragon. She was indeed the one who proposed the cow laced with sedatives idea, and was very in favor of not fighting the dragon, which probably wise. Unfortunately, that was not what ended up happening, but we'll get there in a bit. While they're talking, Farkin kind of recalls some information about dragons. He knows that they very seldom leave their lairs, so not only is it odd that this one came and made a new home in this region, but it also is not likely to leave anytime soon. This isn't going to be a situation where the dragon just flies on doesn't happen. So he recalls that information about dragons and their lairs, and just general knowledge about dragons, like the differences between chromatics and metallics and that kind of thing. There was quite a bit of discussion about electricity, grounding, and Faraday cages, and whether or not armor counts as a Faraday cage, and having fields of lightning rods to kind of combat the dragon's lightning breath. While these were, of course, clever, my group contains not a few engineers and scientists and people who are very well versed in this kind of thing, so makes total sense that their minds would go there. But of course, the characters don't really have that great of an understanding about electricity or the technology pertaining thereto. So it was I ruled that wasn't really something that their characters could learn. However, and don't tell the players this, but there might be some opportunity for them to learn that stuff later on and use it against a future fight, because I do think it's a really cool idea. But that's for another time. The Myrmidons kind of help prepare the party for the fight, relate what little they know of the history of this region. It was at one time, likely before the Scouring, a large self-contained city-state. It had, many acres of supporting farms and smaller settlements outside of the main sort of metropolitan area. So farming communities and smaller towns outside that were able to provide like goods from various other areas in the region, and like the mine that was a little bit closer to the mountains and so had access to more ores and things like that. So it was this whole kind of booming large community, and at its center was this one big city, and it's big even by modern standards. As far as like land goes, it would be considered quite large, not quite population wise, but it stretched over many acres, probably a couple dozen square miles even. So huge city, kind of a self-containing community all in there. And what's interesting is that those aforementioned watchtowers are kind of speckled throughout the territory. And so they mentioned that, maybe one of those towers would be a defensible spot where you could set up, fortify, and hunker down, possibly defend yourself from a dragon attack. Let's see. Yes, during the night, an ankheg is spotted by Cranmore and I believe Corilla, I think, one of the Myrmidons. So they hear this rumbling underneath of the camp, and like it moves across the area, and then in a little grove of trees a little ways away from where they camped, this ankheg bursts from the ground and snatches a fox in its jaws, claiming its prey. And Cranmore is kind of like, "Wow, isn't nature beautiful?" And Corilla kind of looks at him like, "Yeah, as long as I'm not the one getting eaten." So they meet their first ankheg, which are relatively frequent scouts and minions to this dragon within the region. The next morning, as I believe the final watch is closing, Jasna and Morthos, I believe, spot the dragon leaving its lair. It flies upward into the sky from the mine, circles around in a several mile wide arc, and then dives downward towards something. Prey, interesting shiny thing, who knows? It dives out of sight, and they do not see it again. As they travel, they come upon one of those watchtowers, and Corilla says that this is the one that will be closest to the mine's entrance. They're still a few miles away, but they kind of begin making their preparations, and as they do so, Norwin decides that he's going to try and get the attention of the enemy using thaumaturgy to amplify his voice. He starts from the tower, realizes it won't get quite far enough, and decides that he's going to kind of range out on his horse and see if he can get close enough to grab the attention of the dragon. Cranmore goes with him as kind of making sure he doesn't go too far. And they'll go for just a couple of miles before Cranmore's like, all right, this isn't working, let's turn back. And as they are heading back, as they actually near the tower in their return, another pair of ankegs are heard kind of rumbling beneath the ground around them near the entrance to this tower. Two of the myrmidons, Zephylla and Corilla, are kind of right outside the entrance, sort of making a lot of racket on the surface, kind of pounding the ground, trying to draw the ankegs out, because they want to use these scouts as basically a message to be sent. By killing one of them and leaving the other to go return to its nest, they hope to kind of draw the dragon to them as a sort of summons, hey, we're here. And they are successful in getting the ankheg's attention. The two of them burst from the ground and a skirmish commences. Cranmore easily just stuns one of the ankheg's for like the entire fight, which is only, I think, 2 rounds, because the party just wrecks the other ankheg, and the first one is like below 10 HP as the battle ends, and it is still Cranmore knocks it out with non-lethal damage. It just knocks it unconscious and then hurls it like 20 feet away, because he's a moose tar and he can do that. And as it kind of regains consciousness, it just immediately burrows and starts running away, with what is effectively a message. So, preparations to meet the dragon begin. The Myrmidons take their posts at the arrow slits within the watchtower. Jasna is busy at work trying to repair a ballista that she has in her bag of holding, hoping to finish it before the dragon arrives, as it will be quite valuable. Ballista versus flying lizard, probably a good idea. The tower is equipped with a cauldron of pitch over the only entrance, which I think is kind of forgotten in the next episode when they actually fight it, but it's there. I guess the dragon never really got close enough for it to matter, so. But there is a cauldron of pitch that can be lit and tipped over to scald and burn anyone who tries to approach the gate. There's also a ballista on the tower, but as Jasna's is a little bit more mobile, she opts for fixing hers instead. As the afternoon wanes and the sun glows in the west, just after Jasna has completed the repairs on her ballista, the sun halos the outline of an adult blue dragon, along with a cadre of half-dragons and kobolds. They are flying straight towards the party. Yes, flying kobolds. They're not in the monster manual, but I think they're super cool, and I think Kobold Press published them or something. So, works for me. So these half-dragons and kobolds are flying as a retinue with this adult dragon straight towards the party. The dragon actually alights a mile or so away, seeming to be content with allowing its minions to fight the party first, and just seeing how they fare. However, Norwin calls out a greeting to the dragon, which it ignores, and then he calls out again, which he is again ignored. But then he says that the party has come on behalf of Enlaun, the gold dragon they met some time ago and helped in the early stages of their adventure. At this, the dragon lets loose a deafening roar. His minions land near the castle, but not quite in combat range, and the dragon himself takes to wing, flying straight towards the tower. That is where the session ended, and we will pick up next time with the fight. Thank you everybody for listening to this summary, and as always, may all your rolls be lucky.